Hey, what's going on, GameLeapers? This is Coach Cheeks, and in today's upload, we're going to be revealing the 10 best champions for patch 12.10, which will be hitting the Rift tomorrow. So to know who the most broken mid laners are going to be in this new durability tankier meta, it is time to listen up and engage. Now, if you want to master any of the champions in this video, guys, make sure you check out the GameLeap website in the description and comment section, because we have the best challenger players and coaches uploading up to 20 videos a week. They are exclusive, they are for our subscribers, and they are made by the best to help you become one of them. So if you want to achieve your season 12 goals, check out those links and let's get into the countdown. Now, starting us off at number 10, we have a champion who loves it when there are more tanks in the game, because if we think about champions like Malzahar and Ornn and Zac and Sejuani, these champions have really good ultimates. And for Sylas, if you can steal one of these, it can be huge. And this is one of the major reasons why Sylas is on the countdown, because tanks, you're going to see them more because the durability changes with HP going up, armor per level going up, magic resist going up. This is just going to encourage more players to play champions in the top lane or even in the jungle that are a lot beefier and have really good ultimates for Sylas to steal. But not only that, because Sylas also runs Conqueror, and this keystone next patch should be a lot easier to actually get to max stacks on and use the damage and also the healing. So because the meta is going to be more durable, right? The fights are going to last longer. The laning phase is going to be easier to navigate out of, because the laning phase is the weakest point for Sylas. Once you get to the mid to late game and team fights start happening and you're split pushing, the game's very easy. But during the laning phase, it sometimes can be volatile and it is a little scary, but because you'll be tankier and the enemy champions won't be dealing as much damage, it should be pretty free to get to the mid game and then take over. So Sylas starts off the countdown, but beating him to number 9 is a champion, well, who might actually like playing against Sylas because his lane phase is very strong indeed, and this is Akshan. And for Akshan, one of the big advantages next patch is, well, not only your strong laning phase, but the fact you can build Kraken Slayer, because champions are going to be tankier once again. And because Kraken Slayer is the ultimate tank shredding item, Akshan will still be able to kill the squishy champions on the Rift, but he'll also be able to go toe to toe with those tankier champions and bruisers. So it's going to be another really good patch for Akshan. Just think about maxing your Q or E depending on the matchup you're in. Now, boasting the number 8 position on this countdown, this is a champion who, in my opinion, is one of the strongest mids in 12.9. So at this moment in time, but in 12.10, he'll still be very good, and this is Galio. And if we think about Galio for a second, we have Twisted Fate, who's been nerfed. So Galio from the mid lane is really like the only other one who has like a semi-global ultimate who can affect the rest of the map. And also because of the new stats you'll be getting, so HP, armor, magic resist, Galio will froth these a lot more than other champions. This will make him hard to kill, but you will still deal plenty of damage and you will still bring the utility, which is highly valued in a tankier meta. So if Galio's open next patch, I'd highly recommend picking him because he pretty much has everything. So he comes in at number 8. Now, beating him to number 7, we're going to talk about another scaling champion here, and a champion who's definitely going to benefit from a safer laning phase, and this is Viktor. Now, Viktor, to be honest, in solo queue works in pretty much every game, because as Viktor, you love champions who jump onto your head or who are close range, because then your gravity field, your ultimate, your death rays, because it's not like you have the range of a Syndra with her E, you don't have the range of a Xerath or a Vel'Koz. You are a short range battle mage, if you will. But the real bonus for Viktor next patch, like I said, is the fact that you'll be tankier, and even if your Q shield is getting nerfed a little bit, everyone else is pretty much getting nerfed as well. You will still be able to get out of the laning phase, because this is when you're most vulnerable, and get your mythic spike and your major item spikes. And another positive for Viktor in 12.10 is potentially the fact that you can build Liandry's Anguish. So if the enemy team composition is very tanky, they're very healthy, and there's a lot of meatheads in that composition, you can consider going Liandry's, because the burn is going to be even more valuable because of the extra HP that will be in the game. And it's also nice for Viktor because of the ability haste mythic passive, and you will still be able to deal enough damage to the squishy champions to still be able to kill them. So Viktor is number 7. Now, who's number 6 on the countdown? Well, a bit similar to Viktor, we're talking about a champion who pretty much exclusively goes Liandry's Anguish, and this is also one of the best scaling champions on the Rift, this being Malzahar. But Malzahar's laning phase is actually pretty strong. He's got insane wave clear, he's hard to kill because of his passive. The only way you really get in trouble is if you go or if you're into a matchup who might outrange you. So champions like Orianna, Syndra, Zig, Xerath, Vel'Koz, these champions can be very annoying for Malzahar because you can never really touch them, and they have a very easy job of triggering your passive, and at that point you're very vulnerable to the CC, to the enemy jungler, but because you'll be tankier in the laning phase, it should make these matchups a little easier, and just because you're an insane scaler, and there will be more HP in 12.10, Malzahar with his innate tick damage and also with Leandri's tick damage, and you might even consider going Demonic Embrace after this, or even Rylai's Crystal Scepter to make yourself even more tankier, which will fit in with the new meta. Malz has to be in consideration, so he is number 6. Now starting off the top 5, number 5 is probably going to ruffle a few feathers because it's Azir. And hopefully you guys got that because he's a pigeon, right? So I said feathers. But yeah, some of you might be like, how is Azir in the top 5 mids when he's like the worst solo queue champion? Well, to be honest, he's really not. Ever since Riot increases HP per level in 12.6, Azir has actually been doing very well, in particular in higher relos where people actually, can really play the champion and make the most out of him. And guess what's happening next patch? You're getting more HP per level, and then armor and magic resist on top of this. And for a scaler like Azir, who actually has a really underrated laning phase because he's got amazing pushing power, but a bit like Malzahar and maybe even Viktor, he does struggle if the enemy mid laner has a lot of range. So a champion maybe like Zoe or Syndra, it can be quite annoying to play against as Azir. But another really big benefit that Azir has, that Sylas has as well, who we mentioned previously, is the fact that you can go Conqueror as your keystone. And remember, because the meta will be tankier, fights will be longer, it's going to be a lot harder not to get to 12 stacks with Conqueror than actually getting to 12 stacks, because you will have more time to do so. Champions are going to be harder to kill, which is amazing for you as well. Your DPS too during team fights, because it's not like Azir is a bursty champion. He's going to be auto-attacking a lot with his soldiers, getting multiple Qs off. You want fights to be extended. A burst meta, it doesn't really suit Azir, and this is going to change in 12.10, so this is why he's starting off the top 5 of the countdown. Now, beating Azir to number 4, we're seeing Yasuo picked a lot at MSI at the moment, and Yasuo next patch is actually going to get affected by some nerfs. So whether it's the Vam Scepter or Shield Bow, but here's the thing, Yasuo, because he is a DPSer, okay, like he does have some burst damage, I guess, in terms of his ultimate, like if he lands a tornado, he can go in and deal a lot of damage, particularly during the laning phase. But in the late game, this champion in the side lane and also during fights can put out damage consistently. His auto attacks, his Q being on a 1.33 second cooldown, and also his wind wall, which will be really useful in team fights as well, particularly against tankier champions like maybe Ornn, for example. And just like Azir and Sylas, who we mentioned, Yasuo is a Conqueror champion. Now, you might consider going lethal tempo, but to be honest, Conqueror just sounds giga broken for 12.10. Like I said, for Azir and Sylas, getting to max stacks, super doable in 12.10, a lot more doable than what it is at the moment anyway, because you won't get bursted down and killed before you reach max stacks. And if we cast our minds back a couple of patches that busted Yasuo, so his HP, his base HP going up, and then the early game ultimate cooldown, it makes him very hard to deal with, because this champion during the laning phase, like a lot of champions on this countdown, he's actually kind of vulnerable. It might depend on the matchup you're in, but he really starts to get going in the mid to late game, because he's going to reduce his Q's cooldown with the attack speed he's building. So with all that being said, Yasuo boasts the number 4 position. Now the top 3 guys, all of these have something in common, and you won't be surprised to hear that all of these are amazing scaling champions. So if you're someone who likes to kick back and chill in the mid lane, these champions are for you. And also if you just want to win, because these will be the best mid laners in 12.10, it is time to listen up. So coming in at number 3, we have Kassadin. And here in Kassadin, it should just make sense, right? Because late game is going to be a more apparent thing in 12.10. Games are going to end later. So even if you're 0-3 on Kassadin at 10 minutes, the game is still comebackable because of your scaling. Because once you get your tier stacked and you get a couple of major items, that's when Kassadin can take over, and you're going to get these major items more often in 12.10. Also, because you're getting more resistances and HP, this really solidifies your early laning phase. Now, I will just say this about Kassadin, it's quite scary playing against attack damage mid laners, because you are the ultimate mage counter. So you do have to be a little bit careful of Aurelias and maybe Pantheons, Akshans, these type of champions. So really you should be picking Kassadin when you know you're going to have a free lane. And to be honest, with this new patch in mind, Kassadin does sound very, very deadly. So if you are picking a mage in the mid lane, you might just want to ban him. But Kassadin is going to be great in 12.10, so he is number 3. But maybe an even better scaler than Kassadin in 12.10. This is actually a champion who's going to be really good in the top lane as well, and this is Kale, who I think is going to love the new durability and HP armor, magic resist buffs more than Kassadin. And the reason for this is because Kale's laning phase, to be honest, is just more difficult to get out of, especially before level 6 and then level 11. Once you get to this point though, and you get some major items under your belt, it's going to be very difficult for the enemy team to win. But Kale is certainly going to love 12.10, but not as much as the number 1 mid laner. And you guys can probably work this out, because this little blue mage has been so broken for pretty much the entire season. And this is Vega. And because of his Q stacking, which got buffed this season earlier on, this is going to bring even more dividends to baby Gandalf. You'll be using more stacks in game. games because the games are going to last longer. And when we think about Vega, he brings so much utility because of his cage, his event horizon. So it's not just about hitting hard with your Q stacks, right, and dealing damage with your primordial burst. It's also about putting the cage on multiple enemy champions, and lots of these champions would struggle against Vega because lots of them are close range. So champions like Azir and Kalen and Malzahar and Viktor, they would find it very annoying to play against Vega. And when you throw Everfrost, Deathcap, Sork Shoes, and then even something like Gargoyle's Stoneplate or Anathema's Chains might be really good, because we're probably going to see Cogmores and Vayne's back on the menu. Well, Vayne's been on the menu all season, but you get my point. There are going to be some hyper carries that will be really busted because champions will be tankier. So using your Anathema's Chains active on that champion will cuck them enough for you to just win that team fight, and all you had to do was just spend a bit of gold and press a button on top of their heads. So Vega, guys, is number one, the number one mid laner for 12.10. Let us know in the comments if you agree or disagree. Any other thoughts on the actual countdown in the champions, let us know down below. And if you did enjoy the video, please remember to leave a like down below as well. And until tomorrow's video, I'll stop asking you to do stuff. This has been Coach X. Peace.